Did you know that the family structures of Neanderthals looked a lot less like modern humans and incredibly more similar to critically endangered mountain gorillas? Thanks to mind-blowing advances in ancient DNA, we can now see that Neanderthal women actually left their home caves to find mates, while men stayed put. Stick around, because we're going to look at the very first multi-generational Neanderthal family tree ever discovered. Hi, I'm Krutik, I have a PhD in genetics, and on this channel we decode the secrets of evolution, biology, and human anthropology, using peer-reviewed science. Neanderthals are our mysterious cousins, who we diverged from roughly 400,000 years ago. We know they had art, they had rituals, but exactly how structured were their societies? That has been a massive mystery. That is, until a groundbreaking study from 2022 by Skolf and colleagues published some ancient DNA research. Now let's dive in. So up here I've put up a map of the Siberian Altai Mountains. The researchers found 13 Neanderthals who lived here roughly around 50,000 years ago. 11 of these specimens were found in Chagrskaya Cave in the blue-colored dots here, and 2 of them were found in Okladnikov Cave in orange here. What I found absolutely incredible was how geographically close these caves were to the famous Denisova Cave, which is the spot where Denisovan hominins were first discovered. Now I've put up a genetic tree. This estimates the genetic difference between the specimens over time and clusters them based on similarity. Do you see where Denisova 11 sits over here? I've highlighted it. Now this is a very special case study. Denisova 11 is a famous first-generation hybrid. She had a Neanderthal mother and a Denisovan father. Now, to be exact, Denisova 11 lived tens of thousands of years before the Chagrskaya family, but her Neanderthal mother came from a population incredibly similar to the Chagrskaya Neanderthals. They very likely were ancestors of the Chagrskaya family that were found to live there roughly 50,000 years ago. That's incredibly cool. This shows that these caves, and this region, has a long history of Neanderthal occupation. There's also something quite interesting here. We are seeing clusters of Neanderthals. We have this largely Chagrskaya dominated cluster here, and we have this Oklandikov cluster here, and also these Western Neanderthal clusters over here. This paints a vivid picture of distinct, localized geographic communities where the Siberian Neanderthals and Denisovans were a bit more genetically closer to each other, possibly due to active interacting, and this segregated them from Western European Neanderthals that we found in places like France and Italy. And this level of segregation could have made a cline or a genetic gradient that could have existed for tens to hundreds of thousands of years. And that's really interesting because we usually associate genetic clines with Homo sapiens. There's no reason why Neanderthals could not have had distinct clines or races amongst themselves. The researchers did not just find random Neanderthals living alone. They literally found a family. Check out this chart of Chagrskaya and Oklandikov Neanderthals. We have a high certainty, based on heterogeneity, that individual D and H were a father and daughter pair. Individual A and L, or second-degree relatives, like an aunt or nephew or cousins, and individuals C, D, and E shared the same exact maternal bloodline. By looking at the level of heterogeneity, which is the diversity of the DNA between individuals, we can estimate the size of their community. Because their genetic diversity was incredibly low, the researchers were confident in estimating that this was a very small society, where no more than 20 individual Neanderthals living in these sites at the same time. This level of isolationism could have been a factor in their ability to compete against later arriving Homo sapiens. I'll be back to comment on how this ties into the extinction of Neanderthals, but first there's something incredibly powerful to be learnt from their sex-based chromosomes. To understand how this society actually functioned, scientists split the data and looked at the Y chromosome, which is passed down from fathers, and the mitochondrial DNA, which is only passed down from the mother. And they specifically looked at coalescence times. This is a technique to back calculate the number of years it takes for a piece of DNA to diverge. The larger these times, the more genetic drift or outside admixture has occurred. Look at the bars for Chagrskaya on the far left on this chart. The mitochondrial DNA, shown as the left pair for each bar plot, has an extremely divergent coalescence time when compared to the Y chromosome. To give you some context on why this is interesting, look at the Sungir people in the middle. They are an upper Paleolithic group of Homo sapiens that live in modern-day Russia. Their female-to-male coalescence time ratios are roughly 2:1, essentially meaning the women of this clan tended to be up to twice as diverse as the men. But based on our Chagrskaya family, we see a 9-time separation ratio. This means that females were vastly more genetically divergent than their male counterparts within their same families. And males were much more likely to be genetically similar. This strongly suggests that Neanderthal societies practiced female-biased dispersal. The females had to systematically leave their birth groups and move to new caves to find new homes for reproduction, in turn reducing inbreeding, while the males stayed right where they were born, or were much more likely to stay where they were born. So, I talked about gorillas at the start. Where do the gorillas fit into the story? Interestingly, this exact pattern of female-biased dispersal, where females leave their birth clans to avoid inbreeding, is the norm for gorillas. But how do these hominin movements actually play out on the ground is a mystery. Was a single Neanderthal woman trekking alone through the harsh Siberian landscape to find a neighboring cave and some eligible Neanderthals, a more organized and ritualistic exchange between tribes? Something similar in modern human cultures where the bride has to go and live with the groom's family, which is practiced quite commonly in humans. Whatever this looked like, this practice of female-biased migration was likely deeply ingrained in the ancient traditions of Neanderthals. We only have a few case studies of these, but it could be that tens of thousands of years before our Chagrskaya family lived, this exact behaviour might have been how a migrating Neanderthal woman crossed paths with a Denisovan man, and they both produced Denisova 11 together, the famous half Neanderthal, half Denisovan hybrid. And while using gorillas as an allegory for how Neanderthal societies may have been run requires a bit of imagination, it gives us a fascinating glimpse into the final chapters of our long-distant cousins. Because it begs a specific question. Why do the Neanderthal DNA divergence times look incredibly more similar to mountain gorillas, but not so incredibly similar to eastern lowland gorillas, who also practice female-biased dispersal? It comes down to population size. Mountain gorillas are endangered. They survive in tiny, isolated troops of 4 to 20 individuals. That pretty much mirrors the size estimates for our Chagrskaya clan, based on their heterogeneity. The Neanderthals found in these caves 50,000 years ago represent a distinct period of decline for their species. The easternmost Neanderthals were living on the brink, clinging to survival in a small, highly isolated family which was on the edge of the known world. On that slightly macabre note, we've seen how modern genomic technology can bring back ancient stories. Using a bit of imagination, we can start to piece together how our ancient cousins might have lived. If you enjoy this type of genetic deep dive, please hit the subscribe button. It genuinely helps the channel grow and shows me what kind of content you enjoy. Leave a like, leave a comment, and follow me on X at EvoBio-SJC for more peer-reviewed science videos. And I'll see you next time for more science.